Hello beautiful people. Today we're going to talk about Seneca Village, which is now considered Central Park, but it was a once all black community that was thriving in what was once called a black suburbia. If you're new here, please give me a follow. I teach black history. I also have a IG and a TikTok. It'll be in the description of this. In the meantime, let's get into the black suburbia. In the early 1820s, there was a black man by the name of Andrew Williams. He was a shoe shiner, and he shined so many damn shoes that he saved enough to buy 10 acres of land, totaling 3 lots, and I believe it was $125, which during this time is a lot of money. Along with Mr. Williams came a woman named Epiphany Davis. She was a store clerk, and I believe she bought 12 lots, and her total was $580. So these lots of land bought so closely together, they had this black mindset of creating a black mecca, a black community, and that's exactly what they did. And they started to open up different stores and build different houses and welcome in other families to rent these houses and or buy these houses or lots of land. If you can imagine, it's New York, it's the early 1820s. Racism is running rampant through the streets, so black people that could afford to get out of the city saw Seneca as exactly what it was supposed to be intended, the Mecca, and that was the safe space for those affluent black families, and that's where they went. Since slavery was outlawed in New York in 1827, a lot of black people saw Seneca Village as kind of a safe haven, so the word got out, and it got out fast and spread like wildfire, so much so that by 1830, there was 10 homes already on the land of Seneca Village and more people coming. Now, a large part of the influx of people was definitely due to a lot of the industrialization of New York during this time. There was a lot of buildings going up and a lot of land just being cleared. And part of it was York Hill. York Hill citizens had nowhere else to go. And a large amount of those people were Irish and black. So they decided to settle in Seneca Village. A little fun fact about Seneca Village. Seneca Village acted as kind of a safe haven during the anti-abolitionist riot of 1834, and if you don't know much about that, I'll definitely go into that into another video. Another contribution to the large influx of specifically Irish people in Seneca Village is definitely the Great Famine of Ireland. If you don't know much about the Great Famine of Ireland, I probably won't go through that in this video or on this page. But it's basically where Ireland went through a famine where a lot of people went without food, water, and sometimes even electricity. So they had to flee Ireland, and a lot of people came to America. And that first stop, the closest city, is New York. So once you get to New York, you've realized that they're overpopulated, and you see Seneca Village. And they're open arms welcoming people, so that's how a lot of Irish people found themselves in Seneca Village. It's also important to know at this time, America's whites, those blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, were not fucking with the redhead whites, okay? The Irish people were not welcome, and they were treated exactly how black people were treated. Probably not exactly like, but very similar. They were disregarded, disenfranchised, and pushed to the side. And of course, they weren't, it was not as bad as black people were treated, but on a grand scheme of things, if you ask them, they were treated how black people were. Now, it's also important to know, during this time, and this also happens currently, when a certain group of people, a certain ethnicity of people are mistreated in America, their first thing to do is to turn their backs on black people and mistreat black people, because that is a universal kind of action of being approved by Western people or by white people. And that's exactly what the redhead people were doing in New York, but the owners of Seneca Village wasn't fucking with that, and they told every Irish person that came, you either gonna respect our people or you cannot live here. At the end of the day, this was created for us, and it was understood. There was a mutual respect, but Irish people were not just accepting of black people. Although black people were accepting of them, Irish people thought being racist toward black people would make them more accepted in the white community, but that was not the case. During this time, a lot of Irish women were also being called witches and things like that. So the trust in the white community was definitely not there. A little fun fact, George Washington Plunkett, a U.S. Senator of New York, was actually born in Seneca Village, and his money, along with the other owners of the land, of the different lots, they all built together 3 churches, 2 schools, and excuse me if I look off screen, I'm looking at my notes, 2 schools, 3 cemeteries, 1 grocery store, and a total of 95 homes, single family homes. Give it up to them. So out of the three churches, two of them were all black, and one of them was like a biracial type of church where everyone was invited. And to name them, I'm looking off screen again. First African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church of Yorkville and the African Union Church were both all black. The All Angels Church was actually racially mixed. The All Angels Church is the only church that stood, or that they kept, I guess you could say, alive after the demolition of Seneca Village, but I believe they moved it down the street. But nonetheless, the other black churches were demolished. In Seneca Village, it was highly, highly important to stay clean, educated, and affiliated with a church. You have to stay faith-based. Another thing was they practiced etiquette, so they had a lot of different black etiquette schools for the children. So if you can imagine knowing how racist New York was, just because slavery was abolished does not mean that racism just disappeared, as we can see today. So New York was extremely racist. So the inner city black kids and people were trying to send their kids to school in Seneca Village, just this small little less than 1,000 acre of land, and that's how much it's grown, and that's how much its influence hit the community. Although slavery was abolished, black people still didn't have the right to vote, but there was a clause that if you owned land in the city, then you gained the right to vote. So over 50% of the people that lived in Seneca Village who owned land gained their right to vote simply by owning that land. In New York, if you were a black man, the law required you to own $125 worth of land, and you had to live on the land for 3 years in order to be qualified to vote. And only 100 black men in the state of New York had that right, and 10 of them came from Seneca Village. By the 1850s, we're 20 some odd years into Seneca Village. It's booming, it's thriving, it's growing. The city of New York wanted to build a big stupid ass park that still sits there today, which we call Central Park. And ironically, Seneca Village wasn't the first plot of land that they plotted on. There was a white neighborhood neighboring Seneca Village, but those people stood their ground, and they were white, so of course they got away with a lot of things that they did. They damn near stormed the Capitol. They made sure that no one is taking my land, and we're willing to kill you or ourselves for that. So the government looked elsewhere, but they didn't look far. They saw Seneca Village being as booming and thriving as it was. And also during this time, this was not just peaches and cream for Seneca Village. Those 20 years, they were met with a lot of government and political backlash, a lot. So why not get rid of the black Mecca and use the term eminent domain as the reason? Side note, it said that eminent domain was actually created to take land from black people, which is a sad little fact about history. Before the government pulled out their eminent domain weapon, they tried a number of tactics, including smear campaigns, where they put in the newspaper that the people of Seneca Village were heathens, they were vile people, they were barely human, they were disgusting, and like just ignorant people. They smeared the community of Seneca Valley or Village so bad, where a lot of people in the city started to agree with the demolition of the city, and that's exactly what their goal was. It's also important to note, during this time, the local government also called these people squatters, wretched. They claimed that they had illegal businesses, that they had all types of vile things going on. I don't want to leave anything specific out, especially when it comes to the lies that were spread about my people. Many of these lies actually were started by the parks engineer, just to get the ball rolling. Once the federal government got on board, the local officials started to charge these people that owned this land rent. And if you didn't pay that rent for your own land, you were pushed out. You had to leave. And that happened to hundreds of residents of Seneca Village. Finally, in 1856, President Fernando issued a public eviction of all people on Seneca Village. A lot of people stayed there to the deaths, and if you go there to this day, there are tombstones still there where Seneca Village once was. None of these residents were properly compensated for their land at all. None of their land was bought. It was taken from them. And ironically, the reason that a lot of people know about this is because there was a gardener with the last name Gilhooly. Excuse that sound. But there was a gardener by the last name Gilhooly, and he saw his last name on one of the tombstones at Central Park. And he looked into the history and found out that his ancestors once lived on that land that they were never compensated for. There's a book called The Park and the People that I read. It's by Roy Hosenweg, I think, and Elizabeth Blackmar. Y'all gotta watch that. But in the meantime, that's it about Seneca Village. Thank you so much for watching. More content coming soon. Again, follow my web pages down below. And in the meantime, love ya.